Welcome to episode 21 of the Chi-Town Shoot Wrestling Podcast. I'm Marcin, and joining me in the squared circle are Chris, David, and Andres. We're coming at you from the heart of the wrestling world, Chicago, Illinois, bringing you the latest news, hottest takes, and all things WWE and AEW. Don't forget, we want to hear from you. Send us your thoughts, questions, and wildest predictions to chitownshootpodcast at gmail.com, and we'll tackle your comments in the Chi-Town Shoot mailbag. Without further ado, let's get into it. And I think we want to start out first talking about the Wrestle Dream pay-per-view and kind of what took place this past week. I don't know if you guys have any life updates before we get into what happened this past Sunday. Did anything happen this past week with any of you? David, anything new?
Everything's new. Life's great, baby. Life's great.
Good.
New endeavors.
New things to look forward to.
Yeah. Pushing on things that we currently do and making them better.
That's awesome.
Kind of works out that we're wrapping up towards the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And we've almost been doing this for a year, so it's a good time to, sit down, look around, enjoy things,
reassess.
Enjoy my holiday.
Damn, what are we going to do for our 1 year anniversary?
Well, I think it's in January, right? So I can think of something during the holiday season because I took off like 2 weeks from December 18th to like January 4th or something like that. Right? That's 3 weeks.
Yeah, I got that off too.
Yeah, great. Well, lots of time to plan things out.
Got this extended vacation.
Yeah. That's awesome. And Andres, what about you? You said you're starting a new job?
Part-time job over at Export. Just some front desk work for extra money.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good.
Membership.
Yeah, that's mostly the incentive too. So I save that money as well.
For sure.
That's
and
great.
then I'm getting settled into the new place. So just taking care of the odds and ends right now. But it's been good.
All moved in. You still got boxes to unpack?
Yeah. Got some totes here and there. And then just doing the room over. And then eventually I'll get a PC rig, and then I'll have like the full camera like you guys. I won't have this. Yeah. Eventually, right?
Hey, one thing
Maybe
at a
Black
time.
Friday. I'll do it.
Moving on up. How about you, Chris? What's new with you?
You know what's new? We went to some pumpkin farms.
Yep. Go-Berts. We went to one that was literally called Didier. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. Didier. And the way it's spelled, it kind of looks, if you read it real quick, it did sound like Diddler. But yeah, it was like a free entry thing, right?
Diddier than Diddy.
Yeah, it was more Diddy than Diddy. It was Didier. So that was fun. But yeah, then we saw Terrifier 3 in the evening. Yeah. I vaguely remember the first one because I think I tried watching it. I don't even know if I finished it completely. And I guess at least with this one, I guess there was more of some kind of storyline because the first one was basically just kind of like, here's different scenes of gruesome, gory, violent attacks. And this one, I mean, I guess they built out some kind of lore in the second one, but I didn't watch that. And it just kind of worked out that Arlene wanted to go see it. So I was like, all right, let's just, finish the night with that. And that was a bad idea. I was like, I think I need to take like a shower or something after I watched that. I went back home and watched like Disney Halloween like specials so I could like wash that out of my head. Because I was like, I can't go to sleep with that imagery in my head. I don't know how Arlene watches that. It's like a morning cartoon or whatever, because I was like, and there were like 2 6-year-olds. I don't know why the hell would you bring your 6-year-old to something like that, especially because like in this movie, what I mean, they did not give a crap about like who they killed. It also involved like kids that kind of age too, like right at the beginning, and you have like your 6-year-old watching, little Jimmy hacked to pieces in his bed. And I guess they were trying to be like tasteful about it because they're like, well, we'll show the back of the head and a little bit of this and that. They weren't trying to be like super obvious, but like, I mean, it was obvious.
It was clearly obvious.
Yeah, they did not skirt the line. They definitely went over the line. So I don't know. I don't think it's something I would rewatch again. It was like I guess like an attraction kind of thing, like some weird morbid curiosity. But it's not something I'm like, oh, let's rewatch the whole trilogy back to back because that would mess me up if I had to watch all three in a row. No. What about you, Chris? What did you think of that movie?
And I mean, there were moments I was just like, I mean, he's meant to be generally it's just so crazy. It's almost like funny, you know what I mean? Even despite like the morbidity, there were definitely moments where I was like, wow, that's crazy. But I mean, it was what it was. I thought it was generally a well-paced movie despite all the craziness, stuff like that. But I thought it was a good movie within that genre.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I agree. Like, it was like pretty well acted, minus the Chris Jericho cameo, which I guess we could mention that Jericho was in this. I guess he was in the second one too, apparently. And then in this one, he's in there. And I was telling Chris offline that I think Jericho's acting was better in the pro wrestling matches and promos than in this movie. But maybe it was intentional.
Yeah, I think it was intentional. I think he was just trying to like kind of like phone in like that B movie kind of like acting where he was just like his face was like purposefully giddy, shocked, like he was like, oh, and then that's horrible.
It was like porn acting.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. He put that in his like bio. He's like, yeah, I'm the guy that was in that movie. Like it was like a starring role.
I mean, if it is, I think it technically is the #1 movie of the weekend. So I mean, yeah, you gotta maximize your, your spotlight time, I guess. I mean, he's also a heel, so that kind of adds to it too. So
I gotta figure it out. I saw the first one. I didn't see the second one though.
apparently, Arlene was saying the second one was worse than this one. I'm like, if it's worse than this one, I'm not watching the second one.
I just first one I thought was bad too, so I gotta see the second one.
Yeah, I'm like, what the hell? I mean,
I don't watch that stuff.
The only one like that, the part that I saw someone mentioned in the second one was like, so like he literally like bashed this dude's heads into like hamburger meat, and then he like served up mashed potatoes, and then like took part of his face and put it next to the man. I'm like, that's messed up. Good googly moogly. But anyway, this isn't a Terrifier podcast. But we did mention Chris Jericho and wrestling. So Wrestle Dream also took place this weekend, and there was a lot of really good matches. I'm still a little questioning the ending just because I think you know what it is. I think it's like the same feeling I felt when The Rock during WrestleMania season, he was basically turning heel in real time, and it had that feeling of like they're trying to do something new, and it was like uncharted territory in terms of like how they were executing it. And the ending to Wrestle Dream, that feeling that I felt during that press conference during this year's WrestleMania, is similar to what I felt last night or the other day at the Wrestle Dream pay-per-view. So we'll see what happens in Dynamite, but I honestly don't know how I feel about it. I mean, Bryan Danielson, I think I might have said Daniel Bryan. Bryan Danielson is one of those people that I feel like deserves a bigger spotlight of an ending, and honestly, I guess that's just my personal feelings about it, because basically his last Dynamite was last week, and unfortunately it was like one of the lowest rated ones. And then at Wrestle Dream, I just didn't. I mean, the crowd was hot in certain parts, like they get hot, but then it got like quiet, like because I guess it depends on like the size of the arena, but like if you're like at an all-state arena or something that has like 15 or 16,000, even when there are lows, there's still this kind of like ambiance of like people like chattering or talking or doing some things. When I was watching Wrestle Dream, it was like very loud certain parts, and then when nothing's happening, it felt quiet. Like there was none of that like underlying like audience chatter noise. You know what I mean? Like that felt prominent to me. So that kind of sucked in my opinion, especially because it was like 3 wrestlers' hometowns. They're like, oh, we got Darby, we got Bryan Danielson and Swerve Strickland, right? They're all in the Washington state because they're all in like different cities.
They're all from the Seattle, Tacoma area.
Yeah. So that was nice. But David, what did you think of the Wrestle Dream ending? What did you think of Wrestle Dream in general?
I liked it. I think AEW's done really well at not having a bad pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And ending, I'm cool with it because, like, Brian's not, like, retiring. He's just retiring from full-time status.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. So, like, I think it's like a semi-send-off for him. I think he's smart enough to be like, I'm retiring. Like he knows better to do that, especially since he's had to retire.
Right.
So
he's had to do it before.
He's trying to make it sound as far away from Flair as possible. Like he's just like, I'm not going to be full time.
Yeah, I mean, but I also feel like Bryan Danielson has that kind of feeling like Ric Flair does towards wrestling too. Because, you know, a man who's broken his neck and basically had a career-ending injury and then came back from that injury and kept working, and it seemingly was worse than what people thought in terms of like his recent like diagnosis of his neck, and then he just kept wrestling through it. I don't know.
Dr. Nick Riviera cleared him.
Yeah, I mean, like that's a certain personality, I think, too. Like if you're willing to put your body at risk that hard because you want to keep wrestling, I mean, that was also then bizarre that we didn't get to see who's he married to, Nikki or Brie?
Brie.
I keep forgetting. Brie Bella. Now that was weird that she wasn't there. If that was technically maybe his last match or potentially, like, she wasn't even there. That was weird. So maybe because she was like laughing or something the other time, and they were like, you know what, let's keep you off camera.
let's not take the kids to see a bag get put over my head.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? That's probably what was part. Like, well, someone's got to watch the kids, and we don't want Daddy to have a plastic bag over his head.
We don't need Buddy Danielson being 3 years old, ready to get in the ring and avenge his father.
Right. So. Andres, did you get a chance to watch Wrestle Dream?
Unfortunately, no. I just saw the highlights on my phone.
Yeah.
So I saw like some of the winners and stuff like that. But I did see a lot of the ending of the Daniel Bryan match, and I was like, oh man, like that's not. Yeah, he's definitely not going to retire. That's a like as David said, like full time, sure, but like yeah, that can't be a retirement match where you lose and then you basically get suffocated with like a bag and and you're beaten up. I'm like, yeah, that's not for him. But it was interesting though. But I did see some of the highlights. It looked like a decent show. I did wish I got to had a chance to sit down and watch it, but just due to life circumstances right now, it was kind of hard for me to have that day free. So, but it looked like a decent overall solid show though.
Yeah, that's understandable. And Chris, what side of the fence are you in terms of this reaction to the Bryan Danielson match ending? And because I thought it was funny, I screenshot it. It's literally like 50-50 when I was looking at comments. There's like 700 people who like this is the worst ending whatever in the history of AEW, blah blah blah. And then there immediately, like literally underneath it, there was another one that had just the same amount of likes, said this is the best ending, most intriguing, blah blah blah. I'm like, this is, y'all realize how goofy you look. But which side of the fence are you on, or are you somewhere in the middle? Do you have a more nuanced response to that?
My initial reaction was that I I wasn't sure how to feel, I guess. Like just the shock value of like, oh crap, like they actually like made him lose or whatever. So, but then like after processing it that same night, I was just like, okay, well they're definitely just trying to put a lot of heat on Blackpool Combat Club and what Moxley's trying to do. So we'll see where this kind of goes. I feel like it might be one of those like wait and see kind of a thing. But you know, it is what it is. It's a business with risks. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think he has to have like surgeries or something like that, and that's why he essentially needed to drop it now, and then he'll probably have a formal retirement match when he's better in I don't know a year or something like that. So we'll
So
see.
do you guys think that he will wrestle again after his surgeries?
Oh yeah,
Of course.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay,
Because it's not like there's WWE to say no.
that's true. I mean, I'm just thinking like, I mean, in the story, what did they say? What if he would lose? Doesn't he say his career is over? Or
Well,
I mean,
Retiring from full-time wrestling,
Okay,
yeah, that's what he's
Which-
kind of been saying.
which is kind of silly because it's not like he's been a full-timer for much of AEW. He had
right.
a stretch,
He was
but
basically part timer anyway.
he gets sidelined left and right lately.
Right. So it'll be interesting where it goes. I will say, I mean, and I've been like that critic of AEW in terms of like starts and stops of like major angles, things that I feel like could go just a little bit more, you know, last a little bit longer. Something that really kicks it into ignition, and I felt, you know, this past year that there were a lot of those starts and stops with a number of different factions or group interactions and that kind of stuff. So I just really hope that they stick the landing with this because, yeah, I mean, Blackpool Combat Club, they have some really good folks in there. I hope Jon Moxley as a heel champion can live up to that kind of potential and what AEW needs. You know, I don't know like where MJF is in all this because I feel like MJF at one point was like a super top heel, and now to me it feels like he's just kind of in this weird gray area. Like there's nothing for me that I think like that character is like chewing on specifically. But I mean, I guess there's the Garcia stuff, but I don't know how I feel about that. But anyway. There was also, I think, one of the best matches, if not the best match of the night, was that Will Ospreay, Takeshita, and oh god, I just had a brain fart.
Ricochet.
Thank you, Ricochet. Yep. Who could forget Ricochet? He just got
Easy.
signed. Yeah, see, there you go.
Easy when it's against those two.
So they put on I mean, they did put on a really good match. I'll
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah.
But what did you, David? What did you think of that match? And what
I
do you think
liked
of
it.
the ending?
I liked it. I kind of felt like Takeshita was going to leave with the title, but I didn't think that it was already time for Kyle Fletcher to turn
Mm-hmm.
on Ospreay.
Do you feel like Takeshita winning was too soon? Do you feel like they should have dragged it out a bit more before he actually won the belt off him?
Nah, because he's needed a belt. He's kind of like he started off super hot and then he cooled off, and like if he's gonna catch back up, now's the time to do it. Because he also spent his summer in New Japan wrestling the G1.
Yeah.
So no, like
that'll be interesting.
right now is like the perfect time for all of that.
Especially the build up with Don Callis, introduced him being giant, you know, dude is gonna be like crushing everybody. Like the main thing that was missing for him was that belt.
Mm-hmm. Do you? Well, I mean, I think. Do you feel like is he making the belt, or do you feel like he's in this position where the belt needs to make him in order to be at that level, like we see it in Ospreay?
So with him, I think it's kind of like I've been seeing this clip of Eddie Guerrero going around, where it's kind of like you're supposed like you get the belt two ways, but like the best way to have it is because you make it, and I think Takeshita is one of those people that could make it. Like he's already in a lineage of Okada and Ospreay.
Right.
or not. He's on the international. My bad. So it's got like MJF, you know, all those Orange Cassidy defenses, and everybody else that had the international.
Mm-hmm.
So good for him.
Okay. And Chris,
Are you
what do
talking
you,
about the Eddie
Yeah.
Guerrero interview where he was talking about how he won one of the titles in WCW and how he didn't like it?
Yeah, and then he also talked about like what a belt like should mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's like totally good with putting people over, but like he didn't want to win it that way because like I guess he won by like somebody cheated or something like that. I can't remember, but I remember I just saw that too though.
And Chris, what do you think about the match itself? And do you feel like Takeshita should have won the belt at this point?
I thought it was match pacing was good. I mean, I was saying from the get go that Cash did it. I've been saying that he needs a belt because I feel didn't he have a couple opportunities before? Maybe there was one or two matches that was for title, or am I wrong about that?
He probably has. I know he's definitely been in eliminator matches.
Yeah, he's had like that. A lot of just like teasing it. So I think it was definitely his time. I just kind of felt like that was the for him. Now he could go back and forth with Ospreay. All this, drag that out for a while.
Yeah, and he's defending it in other promotions now. Like he'll be doing Maple Leaf Pro this weekend,
Nice.
which is a revitalized Canadian promotion that has a huge library from like pre-2008.
And you're saying he's defending the
defending
belt there?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's going to be their first event back in business. They're now being ran by Scott D'Amore, who like helped bring Impact back to life.
Mm.
And yeah, it's on a 2-night pay-per-view for the first ever weekend of MLP.
I think I'll make another segment in our future podcast about like the concept of defending a specific wrestling company's belt at another company, and do we feel like that's a good idea or not, and why or why not? But kind of tying back into the Will Ospreay match at Wrestle Dream, and also the series of his matches that he's had. I mean, in general, there has been this kind of criticism of him not selling his moves. And he spoke recently to David Schumark and Kazim Famuyide of the Masked Man Show. Or Famuyide, sorry for butchering your last name. Ospreay was asked about the criticism of his selling, and he says, I just feel that there are different aspects in what people say with selling. If you understand and look at the backstory that I go through, who were the guys that I was training alongside? Okada, Ishii. You don't think at any point in those training sessions in Japanese camps where you'd land on your effing head and they'd be like, get up and just swing? If you don't have that small burst of energy before you're about to do something, they're going to get the upper hand and win. If people don't actually understand where I come from, think about this. Japan took a 22-year-old and taught him how to fight and effing tortured me. They beat the effing piss out of me. I got chopped so hard my eardrum burst. I say to all those people who say you don't know how to sell, you don't know the backstory, you don't know how I effing got here, you've never been in a situation where you've been in a moment where if you don't put your effing foot on the gas pedal, you die. To those people, I get where they're coming from, I understand, but if you pause your opinion for a second and take a wide look at the arena, they're standing up. You can't tell Picasso how to paint. Now, with that in mind, what do we think about that kind of style of wrestling, and how do you feel specifically about how Will Ospreay wrestles? And David, I guess I'll start with you and what your thoughts are about like what he said and like your general view on like that versus like, let's say, a WWE style match, because they are different.
I see what he means. I think the more time he spends in the United States, the more he kind of gets the pacing of the United States. Like, I can see when people complain about his selling his matches, but then it's like if you watch like him versus Swerve, can't really complain. Or like
Mhm.
him versus Danielson, no complaints at all.
Mhm.
Him versus MJF, like can't really complain about like those. Like I don't really see him as like a no sell guy anymore. Like I think that's more reserved for Naito and like more of the older New Japan guys. But
Do you feel like it was warranted at a certain point in his career?
it's warranted when the whole card does it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like for like when we went to Windy City Riot. It's like we kind of seen that every match, but we knew we were gonna see that every match.
Right.
But then it's like it goes over to AEW, and it might be half the card, but for whatever reason, because it's AEW, we kick and scream about it. And like sometimes it's ridiculous, but I don't really see like Will Ospreay do something that's ridiculous. Like like I couldn't imagine like him trying to kick out at one to like a Stone Cold Stunner. Like I don't think he's that type of guy.
Mm-hmm. But what about your own personal preference? Now, there was that kind of, general commentary about his style, and we understand that New Japan has its own way. Same with like CMLL and Luchador Wrestling.
Yeah.
They have their own different versions. Do you have a preference in terms of like wrestling styles? Do you feel like the WWE style has just been kind of ingrained in what you like as a match? Do you have a preference?
I think my preference might be somewhere between WWE and AEW that I haven't like quite found because it's like, for example, like Swerve versus Danielson's probably my favorite match this year,
Mm-hmm.
and that was kind of a WWE match, but then a lot of people could argue that it was an AEW match. Other than it just being in the ring, I mean, it is two guys that were like WWE trained. Swerve spent a lot of time in NXT, you know, and but I kind of like AEW's main event pace,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't really think I know when selling can be ridiculous, and I think they're finding a good place where they don't do the ridiculous no sell. Like, yeah, it happens on destroyers and all that stuff, but it's been happening that way on indies and everywhere else in the world for probably the last 10 years.
Yep. Andre, same question, and just a continuation of like what I asked. Do you have any thoughts on like that style of wrestling, his commentary on it, your personal
Um,
preference?
well, I mean, I love that style of wrestling. It's always been really entertaining, and like, like I didn't. I'll be honest, I didn't really know too much about him until he came into AEW, and he's actually like one of my favorites. I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
But with that style of wrestling, um, yeah, but with that style though, like, no, I can't really say if it's my favorite because, like, kind of like to David's point, like the style between like WWE and AEW, like it's very gray. I don't know, like if I have like because I have like favorite matches, but like I can definitely agree too with the whole point of like Swerve versus um sorry, what's his name? uh
Swerve versus Ospreay.
yeah, sorry, having a brain fart. That was actually one of my favorite matches too. Because they both had very good chemistry, because they both, even though Swerve is, he's got a lot of like aerial attacks too, like him and Ospreay actually, they had, I don't know, like what do you say? Sorry, I'm having a brain fart today. But I would say that style of wrestling though. I mean, was that like it's like Japanese obviously because he was training, but like is it all? It's also like carry on like luchador wrestling, right? In a way.
I mean, I feel like you definitely see it in luchador style wrestling.
Yeah, for sure. Because yeah. 'Cause I remember like it reminds me a lot of like the old WCW, like watching all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely get a good like vibe out of that. But I don't know. Like it's definitely got its place in wrestling. It's been around forever. Is it my favorite? No, but it's definitely entertaining though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, same question.
I think there's a spot like like creating like a match card top to bottom. There's always this various styles of wrestling. I don't think it has to be um homogenized like style, like from A to B. It needs to be WWE style or AEW style or whatever, or something in between. But I think having that variety makes it more exciting to watch because like if you're watching the same match every single it was an Osprey style match all the way through every single match. I mean, that would be boring too. You know what to kind of expect. But if you treat it kind of like in the way of like, oh well, you know what you're gonna get out of an Osprey match, and nobody else is gonna do that specifically on the card. I think it just comes down to the presentation of the overall card, and there's room for it. But me personally, I like that style a lot because it's fun to see a lot of fast movement. And but he's also shown that he can slow it down as well, like the swerve match. Good example where he can slow down the movement, have these fast moments within the match, and then still slow it down, and then just match breathe. So
In that match too, I felt like he sold pretty well too. Like he didn't do that too much of that whole like because he slowed down a lot. I don't. He didn't do too much of that whole like not selling. I felt in that match as well.
yeah, so I mean, no selling. I mean, I guess I didn't watch enough of his like New Japan stuff. I don't know if he was doing that a lot. And I don't. I guess I'm not paying attention enough to New Japan to be like, oh, he no sold that. I guess Naito was a good example because when you had that, was that the Moxley match, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like he definitely like looked like he was just kind of getting up from everything. It seemed like.
Yeah, get like just like a going through the motions kind of feel.
Yeah, it felt kind of phoned in. But I felt like in that case, it just wasn't even like speed. It was just kind of like, all right, time to freaking do the next bit or whatever.
Talking that.
Yeah, maybe that's his character. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of like Orange Cassidy. I mean, to a certain degree, because Orange Cassidy does sell, but I mean, part of his persona is that kind of like nonchalant, kind of like those light kicks and hands in pockets and that kind of stuff. And I guess that's just more part of his character. But like for me, I do think that I agree with you, Chris, that it's like part of your like personal preference, and I prefer it to be more of like a mixed bag. I don't think everyone should be in a WWE style. I think it's good to like intersperse styles, like in terms of like the match card. Everyone should have like I want a Big Show, like a Nia Jax kind of person. I want like an Ospreay or a Rey Mysterio type person. I would love like what we saw with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. It wasn't like the most technical thing, but it was just like basically a beatdown, with some really smart like moves and like the selling and all that kind of stuff. You really buy into that match at Bad Blood with a Hell in a Cell match. Like that's was
a really old school Atlanta match.
Yeah, I mean, like if I'm talking about, if I want to say like, give me a good example of like how to tell a story in a match, I'd point to like that match. When it comes to and I guess there's series of matches. There's 3 or 4 matches that they've had with the strap match and all that stuff. Definitely one of the best matches of the year in my opinion. So yeah, I mean I agree with Ospreay to a certain degree. That like there's like its own style in place, and there is a logic to it. I agree with that. Like if you get like smacked around or whatever, I think your instinct is to immediately like try and fight and get back up. Although to be fair, like if you're in a boxing match or whatever and someone just freaking slobber, like just knocks you in the jaw, like you're not gonna immediately like flip back. You're gonna be like, oh crap, like I'm like leaning on a rope or whatever. You're not gonna immediately start doing like monkey flips, if someone actually socked you in the face. So, but yeah, but at the end of the day, I could also see it like it's wrestling, it's professional wrestling. Like We know it's scripted and all that kind of stuff, so I don't necessarily think it needs to be like consistent, like selling like the way that we think. Like Hulk Hogan, for example, like a Hulk up. If someone punches you and you're just going like, he punched me again, I'm getting stronger. Like, is that realistic? No, but everyone likes it, you know, like that's like it's part of his match, it's part of his gimmick, kind of like
He learned
Cena
that
has
from
his gimmick.
Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I saw,
Cornet.
I saw a match of Hogan in Japan. He wrestled so different. He was actually really fast too.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
He was doing like missile drop kicks, but he would run into them. He would do like leg sweeps, and he was fast.
He
He
knew
was
how to
really
chain wrestle.
What was that?
He knew how to chain wrestle, like a real technician out there.
Yeah, he was. He was
Lock
super
into
technical.
Doing arm twist, one leg over the arm and flipping them and
Real
flipping
grabs.
on bars, real grabs, baby.
I don't think I've actually
Yeah.
seen a Hogan New Japan
I'll
match.
I'll find it again. I'll send it to
Real
you.
grabs. It looks strange. It looks like AI made it because you've never seen Hogan do any of that.
It does
That'll
look
be-
strange because you never see that. Yeah.
Maybe that'll be a podcast episode where I'm gonna give everyone an assignment where you have to watch a Hogan New Japan match, and then we'll just dissect it.
Or anybody
So-
like Western, like all the dudes that were, big in WWE that went to New Japan for a second. Like those moments, I guess you could make. Chris Jericho's. Yeah, the
Right.
Hulk Hogan.
Albert.
Yeah, Albert. What was his name?
Tensai.
Tensai. There you
Tensai?
go. That's it.
Yeah, either
with his fake painted on characters.
or forgot what he was out there, but he tagged with Lesnar for a while.
He might have been Tensai back there too in New
No.
Japan, no? It wasn't just Albert or the Prince. Well, I guess that's Finn Balor.
He just came out with all the piercings.
I love when he was Tensai. People were still like cheering him as Albert and shit.
Albert.
Yeah, I mean that's a little cringy too. The same thing with like when Bray Wyatt, and I'll talk about this in the faction thing. People were calling him Husky Harris. I was like, ugh, like that's a little edgelord cringe.
We know what you were. We have to say.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure I participated in it, so that's definitely cringe. Facebook memory. So yeah. Anyway, I guess we could now. Speaking of the Wyatt family, and thanks for chatting about our wrestling style preferences and commentary. We're gonna go into our main segment for this podcast, and that's the rise the rise of wrestling factions, but like just the I guess like the positivity or negativity of what we feel like wrestling factions are, and I want to get everyone's opinion on this, and we're gonna like just talk about like different factions, what we think is a good faction, what we think is a bad faction, ones that broke up too soon, memorable things. I'm gonna open the door to this a bit,
door?
but the forbidden door of wrestling factions. So wrestling factions have obviously been a core part of storytelling in wrestling. They add layers to a character's development. They help drive feuds. They create a whole bunch of memorable moments. I mean, DX, NWO stuff, that's like the big obvious ones. But they have basically have had their place in history and their influence, and factions, groups in wrestling make a huge impact on wrestling landscapes and storylines. And I kind of wanted to get into like the general concept. And I guess, David, I want to start with you. What do you think makes a good faction?
On-screen chemistry.
Yeah.
Not just five guys shooing it in.
Not five guys wearing the same T-shirt.
Yep. Yelling out their names, being male cheerleaders.
Speaking of that, what do you think is a faction with bad chemistry?
Shit. I want to say anything that doesn't make the cut of being memorable. Like Like I like let's see, one bad faction that I can name
3-man band.
where
Nah, that was pretty good though.
no,
That is a faction.
the League of Nations. Just
Ah,
4 guys they threw together.
Yep. You're vaguely European. You're in different countries.
Yeah.
We
You're
have
Mexican, you're Bulgarian, you're Irish,
Yeah.
and you're from England.
Yep. Was it Wade Barrett was in there, right? That was
Yeah.
after Nexus, right?
It was Wade Barrett, Sheamus, Rusev, and Del Rio.
Oh, right.
and only-
Rio was in there.
And the only purpose of them was just for somebody for Roman to beat up,
Yep.
which is
That
fine.
era.
But like, they didn't have they didn't really do like they don't have like memorable like on-screen promos as
Right.
together, or like I can't remember one interesting segment. Other like the only thing I remember from them is Rusev having the U.S. title and losing it.
Yep. I mean, that's a really good example of like a faction. We know it existed. We know it's in the books, but it's not exactly memorable. And I think it's partially chemistry, and I mean it's also like just shoddy booking. I maybe if they were booked better, it would work, but I don't know. But that's a good one. Andres, what do you think makes a good faction?
Like David's point, like good chemistry amongst the wrestlers. They all have their own like characteristics they bring to the group, but also to like good workers, and like whenever they have like rivals with other groups, they help build up a good story.
Mm-hmm.
So it also helps with like the people they work with too, even if they're like on the opposite side of the ring, I would say. And honestly too, like factions too, like what, 3 minimum, right? Would be like a faction.
Yeah, because like that. Then if it's 2, then I'd say that's just a tag team. So I'd say
True,
3
true.
minimum.
Yeah, that's what I would think. I mean, and now that obviously they all have to help build each other up too, because like you look at all the great factions, a lot of them are Hall of Famers, even in their singles careers too. But they all develop together as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say what makes a great faction is just great chemistry amongst each other, but also like good at building a great story, even amongst like who you're rivaling with.
Do you have an example besides the League of Nations that was a faction with no chemistry, or just like a crappy faction?
Yeah, there's a few that come to mind. I know the core was like more like not recent, but the core was kind of like just like a beat down Nexus, wasn't it? Like
Damn. Sorry,
they
Wade
were kind
Barrett.
of bad. They were kind of bad.
Man, we're just crapping on Wade Barrett's.
Wade Barrett's the common
Speaking
denominator.
of trash,
There was another stable back in the day. It was Harlem Heat, but it wasn't like the original Harlem Heat. They had like more members in it, and it just wasn't good. It was like Harlem Heat 2000 or something. I don't know. Like I don't even think Booker T was even part of it anymore.
Well, yeah, WCW did a thing like that where they remade factions and added 2000 to the end of it,
Yes.
like NWO.
Yeah. Like
There were a
NWO
lot-
2000 was trash too. That was bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say there were a lot of like just things during that like year or two where everything had like a 2000, and then not just wrestling. Like
Yeah, everyone was doing it.
LOD 2000, I think, also was a thing. Legion of Doom. But yeah,
Oh yeah, there was. Yeah.
that's a good one. Harlem, like the other Harlem Heat.
Yeah, the other Harlem Heat. I think it had Stevie Ray. There was a chick in there too. And then there was what's that one dude?
Oh, look,
He's
it's
like in the WWF Warzone games. What's his name? Ahmed Johnson. I think he was part of it. But he was like well past his prime at this point.
Hmm.
So he was wrestling horribly.
Yeah.
Stevie Ray and Big T. Big T's Ahmed Johnson.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a whole list. I don't know if you guys have the document, but I've basically put like a whole list of like factions from like, well, it's like early 90s to mid 2000s, and it's like what I was like going down the list before the show, and I was like, man, some of these I don't even remember, and they were like maybe a faction for like a month or a week, like
Oh, I just thought of another one.
not three, was it 3 Minute Warning?
Oh, I remember them. Yeah.
Nah, that's Rosie and Jamal.
Yeah, that was just a tag team though, wasn't it? Really? Because
Well, so Fremont Warwick had apparently Eric Bischoff, Rosie Jamal, Rico, and Chief Sean Morley.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, like, but it's like no one would really remember unless I like just brought it up. So I don't, you know,
I forgot Bischoff hired them. I remember that.
Yeah.
or the full-blooded Italians.
Yeah. Or X Factor.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Or
Elmwood
X-Factor.
Park. Sounds like Harlem and Belmont.
FBI.
Yeah. All right, Chris, how about you? What do you think makes a good faction?
Sick T-shirts and good catchphrases.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's one of the main
These
big
guys,
for sure.
Bootios.
Right. Yep, that's a good
The
one.
New Day,
Very
New
good
Day.
fact.
that's a really good faction. What do you think? What do you think is an example of like a bad faction? What goes into like what makes it not work? We said chemistry. Was there anything else that you feel like doesn't
doesn't
add up to a good faction? Yeah. Besides
well,
chemistry.
the Blue World Order.
So are you saying like
BWO?
knockoffs? Are you
Yeah,
saying like knockoffs?
knockoffs. I mean, it's just lazy. I think, and it just like putting 3 dudes together because it's like, well, we don't know what else to do with y'all, so you guys are together. That's kind of how I felt about like Death Triangle. I'm like, okay, Pac and the Lucha Bros, like, okay,
Yep.
you know.
Or even like, I mean, I was gonna say the Bang Bang game when you insert Jay White into it. I just feel like that's for me. It feels like fish out of water, and it seems like they're trying to give him to do something on his own, but he still has a Bang Bang Gang jacket. I don't know.
Oh, it's all gold, baby.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like for me, I think what you guys said, chemistry is very important. You said catchphrases. The music, I think, is important.
Oh yeah.
A good theme song is really important. Like you could be like a crappy. You could be like one of the best teams in the world, but I feel like you still need a good theme song, something that really sets you apart. Like NWO, even like the Corporate Ministry had it's like a remix, but it was still good, you know. Groups like that. I mean, Spirit Squad, yeah, it was like a temporary job squad type thing, which is also an actual group.
Got stuck in your head
The
though.
Mod Squad was good.
Yeah, but the theme song was good. I mean, and I guess that's thanks to Jim Johnston because he could make like there were plenty of guys who were like jobbers, but their theme songs slapped, you know. Eugene's was pretty good.
Ding.
Was it?
Who's that?
Dun, 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 dun.
That shit was
I thought this was cool in WCW when there was 2 factions against each other. It was like rap music versus country music. Kurt Hennig was the leader
Oh,
of
yeah.
the 2 bands.
sounds like some weird racist undertone.
It probably was. There probably
Hennig.
definitely was. But there was like a whole like country album that he performed on.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah, he
Damn,
had that
what was
whole
it
rap
called?
is crap thing.
yeah.
man.
It was bad.
Not that music.
Yeah.
You know what? I think another important thing for me in a faction is it is also a vehicle to make new stars. Like it's not just a you know, they're already main eventers. Like if it was just a faction of like Undertaker, Kurt Angle, Triple H as like the, you know,
I
that's
like it.
Like honestly, I mean like it would be entertaining and I guess it does have its place in wrestling, but I feel like there has to be factions that have like new blood injected into it and you make stars out of them, kind of like how we had Evolution. Like that formula I feel like is a really good one where you got Batista and Randy Orton, you have like the current guy Triple H, and then you have, you know, the statesman, the very legend of Ric Flair being in the faction. So I feel like that's a formula for success. And honestly, it can also kind of work like the Nexus had a lot of potential, and all of them were basically, you know, top stars. But the other issue that I think does come across is like you got the momentum and then the booking is crap, you know? And I think the thing that really put the brakes on the Nexus is when like John Cena, I don't think he single-handedly beat them all, but like it was like one of their first big matches and they should have won that match and they didn't.
Skip
You know?
Sheffield. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I think, you know, when it comes to the Nexus, and then we kind of talked about how the core didn't really work because it kind of felt like, you know, you had like a really good thing and then it was like you kept filtering it through other things, like it failed and then you did it again and it failed. And the core kind of felt like that on top of having a really terrible t-shirt, because I didn't think that t-shirt was any good.
Take a look at
In terms, do you remember what it looked like?
Yeah. It was just like the core, but like diagonally, right? I think it just was like that.
Yeah, it was just like their name basically on the side.
I was like on and off with wrestling at that point, but they were in town, so I went with a buddy of mine, and then like I saw them wrestling, and I'm like, "Who's the core?" You know?
Yeah,
And he explained to me who they were, but then like literally like a month or two later, they were gone. Yeah, yeah.
Sick.
Sick. Yeah, this like Iron Man, Tony Stark, freaking thing in the O. And they spelled it with 2 R's. What the hell?
The core,
Yeah.
that Nexus theme song was pretty banging
They
though.
spelled it with a K too, right?
That was
What?
a C.
That was
Oh.
a C. Yeah.
I wasn't watching them
CORRE. Yeah.
for various reasons, like the core.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that 2010s, early 2010s,
Yeah.
full of shit action. Just like put together guys.
That's when I was like, yeah, I like wrestling.
It didn't exist. I mean, I guess there was like a one faction, but it was still kind of like during the 2000s. There wasn't two, like the mid 2000s, I'll say mid to late 2000s, and then early 2010s. There wasn't that many like memorable ones. I will say I did put a picture in it as like a kind of a preview question for our audience about the Straight Edge Society that I think personally was is underappreciated in terms of what the storylines they had and the kind of matches that CM Punk did during the Straight Edge Society. I think that was one of the highlights in like 2009, which, you know, those years weren't that great in terms of wrestling, even though that was kind of like our like peak starting to watch again, you know, time period. Like nuggets like that, because CM Punk basically had it was Serena Deeb, it was Luke Gallows, and then at a certain point, I think Joey Mercury also came back, and they all had their heads shaved. You know, Luke Gallows, I think wasn't he Festus?
Yeah.
Biscuits and gravy, and yeah, being a dummy. That is definitely a McMahon creation, if I've ever heard of one.
Rings the bell.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of funny, but you know, that definitely gives
That's funny for
McMahon
that time.
mid '90s feeling. But yeah, like he basically, you know, in the Straightest Society, he was like, well, you know, he was basically on pills and things, and so basically he saved him, and that's kind of how they explained how Luke Gallows is now like a normal person.
And it worked because he's still good.
Yeah, and he's still good. So, you know, thank you, CM Punk. And then, like, I definitely remember the Serena Deeb thing where she was like some kind of like fan in the crowd or whatever, and it was very like evangelical. Like she was on her knees, and he was like putting his hand on her head.
I forgot
And,
that
like,
was her, bro.
You forgot that was Serena Deeb? I was like, oh, wait, Serena Deeb is wrestling in AEW. Like, that's what I
didn't put two and
remember
two together
from.
until like not that long ago, to be honest.
When I saw her in AEW, I'm like, oh, yeah, she was in the Straight Edge Society. That's where I remember.
I didn't know too much about that group, and I still kind of don't. I just remember when I went to the CM Punk DVD premiere, he touched on that group and like how he like kind of made it like a cultish kind of thing, and like people in the crowd, like elderly women were like offended. Like I think someone slapped him in the face, saying like, "Oh, you're like the Antichrist" or something. He's like, "Oh my God, we're doing a good job.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, like
working."
he had the long hair, and he was
Yeah,
definitely trying to do like Charles Manson type stuff. He was
yeah.
really kind of pushing it with that kind of thing. And then I remember, I don't know, I think this might have been right before, or maybe right around the Jeff Hardy thing, because this was 2009. So Jeff Hardy, I think, did win the WWE Championship, but this was like his like on again, off again, dealing with like drugs and that kind of stuff, and they used that in the feuds. And I'm pretty sure Straight Edge Society was in a feud with him with that, and I feel like that would have been a given because Jeff Hardy has had his shares of issues related to drugs and that kind of stuff.
Didn't CM Punk have a lucha mask at some point when he shaved his head?
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I think they had a hair match. He lost, and then he started wearing like the lucha mask. So he's like basically not giving people the satisfaction of seeing him bald. And was it like a Rey Mysterio match? I don't know what he was in some kind of ladder match, but at one point, like they basically like grabbed his mask and took it off, and they saw his bald head, which was kind of funny because like at that time, like he just did had like the long jet black hair for like the longest time, so that was new for him. But that's definitely a faction that I feel like is underappreciated.
It was short lived too, right?
What's that?
It was short lived too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess speak in terms of factions, I guess that was pretty short lived. I don't think it lasted longer than a year.
Yeah.
So yeah. What about what do you guys have like factions that you feel like the obvious ones I feel like are DX, NWO, Evolution, um, the Bloodline. Are there ones that aren't as well known that you feel like should deserve more recognition, or do we feel like those don't exist?
Failed to mention the Bullet Club,
A Bullet Club, yeah,
The Nation.
Dominate.
yeah.
We said the X Factor a little bit.
Oh yeah,
X Factor had belts.
that's true. Is there anything else to X Factor that you feel like they deserve, a
No.
mention in a podcast like this?
In a bad one. In a bad
they
way.
did it.
Sure.
They did it right. They had a leader, a muscle, and a number 3.
But did they break through? Like, do you feel like they left an impression?
No.
Like Kai and Tai at least had Choppy Choppy or Pee Pee.
I think the Main Street Posse was more bigger than X Factor.
Well, X Pac had more some of his better singles matches while that was his group, because that was when he was like feuding with Jericho and like all that other stuff.
Well, yeah, because they were really pushing him because he was the leader. So, like, yeah, they gave him. He did definitely have a competitive edge to him.
People were just tired of seeing him.
He was always relegated to either the tag titles or like the European title. I remember for like the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
So
X-Pac
yeah, that was an interesting time for him.
Type of heat in the world. They just got tired of seeing him.
Yeah,
I mean,
But then look at all these wrestlers now. Oh, Sean Waltman. Sean Waltman.
Jericho Society. I mean, that was
Jericho Appreciation Society.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he elevated some young talent. I mean, even Blackpool Combat Club with Wheeler Yuta.
Do you feel like the Jericho Appreciation Society was effective? Like, do you feel like it's in the same conversation as like I guess maybe there are tiers, but do you feel like there's is it in the same conversation as like a NWO, DX, Evolution?
I mean, it's a tier under that. I think it's not. It's
B tier.
Yeah.
yeah.
Made Daniel Garcia.
Yeah, within the realm of AEW, I think it did some guys.
The Filthy Animals I thought were pretty good. They were like mid card too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
What
have
about-
Conan, Rey Mysterio, Billy Kidman. Damn, who else was in that group? Kimberly was in there.
Are they? Do you feel like most like good factions are heels, or do you feel like there are like how many good face factions? I guess do you think there are that are actually good? Because I feel like DX were they technically faces or were they supposed to be heels like their first run?
They were a heel
Their first-
faction.
Their original run?
Yeah.
I think they were base. They were bases really because they were like anti-establishment.
Their faces, then they went heel,
Yeah,
and they went face.
Corporate DX.
Yeah.
corporate DX, the
Or
DX
like
Express.
Man Helmsley. That's all heel.
Yeah.
But then
It's like-
like
Yeah,
What?
it's like if I feel like a lot of factions, like if we're talking about like ratios of like heel factions to face faction, I feel like there's more heel factions that exist.
easier to write about.
Yeah, because
Bunch of bad guys beating up a good guy.
yeah, the Brood, Corporate Ministry, Ministry of
Four
Darkness,
Horsemen.
exactly. Was Camp Cornet like I put this on here and apparently they existed, but I didn't know anything beyond that. Apparently they were in 1995 and it consisted of Cornet, Yokozuna, Owen Hart, Bulldog, Vader, Clarence Mason, Fuji, Tom Pritchard, Jimmy Del Rey, and Mantar. And I guess they existed for a year.
Man, Tyler. I don't even know what it is. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah. And then like even Hart, well, I guess the Hart Foundation. I mean, they've had so many iterations. There was Hart Foundation like 1987, and that was Jimmy Hart, Bret Hart, Jim Neidhart, Danny Davis, Honky Tonk Man, Lilani Kai, and Judy Martin. There was the Hart Family. There was the Hart Family / Foundation in 91. I think the one that we kind of know the most is the one in 97 where it was like Canada versus USA Hart Foundation. And that was Bret Hart, Owen Hart, British Bulldog, Jim Neidhart, Brian Pillman. And that I feel like was a unique and interesting one because I feel like what they basically did is kind of what like Drew McIntyre is currently doing in the sense that they never changed their character, but the perception of him as a person kind of shifted. Like their truth was still the same. They didn't change anything that they believed in, but the Hart Foundation, like in the United States, was booed because boo, squeaky clean, good guy, maple syrup sucking Canadians. Yeah, cry babies. And then when they're in Canada, it was like, you know, bizarro world to, you know, pull a great line from Jerry Lawler. So that was interesting. Here's one that I don't remember too much of. Like the Job Squad. So I mean, like this is one that
Pay me, pay me.
it's like so like is there a top star in the Job Squad? Like if your name is the Job Squad, is there a main event like is there a top talent that kind of ties them all together that
Wouldn't it
ushers
be
in
Al
new
Snow?
talent?
Yeah,
So
Al
there's-
Snow, right?
Yeah, so it was Al Snow, Bob Holly, Scorpio, Dwayne Gill, the Blue
Gilbert.
Meanie.
Wow.
And
It
that was
just sounds
the
like
Job
that
Squad.
other group that they had. What was it?
The Blue
No,
Ribbon?
they were WWF, but they came out to the ICP.
I think that was afterward.
No, it had to been before.
Los
Because remember, one guy would
Lobos?
come out, like the biggest guy. He had like a brown leather mask, like it just covered his whole head, and he came
Oh,
out with
that's Oddities.
the oddities. Yeah,
That's with Don Callis. As
Oh,
Calypso.
that just sounded like another group
And
of
they had Crackhead Bob and like a couple other guys.
Yeah, I got the list
Beetlejuice
here.
would show up.
Kurgan, Giant Silva, George the
Kurgan,
Animal
yeah.
Steel, really? Jackal, Hank, the Angry Drunken Dwarf,
No,
Fred, the Elephant Boy, Crackhead Bob, The Insane Clown Posse, actually, Shaggy, Two Dope, and Violent J, Luna Vachon, Golga, and Sable.
Crazy.
Sable's in this too? What the fuck?
I feel like
Golga's
that.
the one with the mask, I'm pretty sure.
I will say though that I feel like the Oddities is similar in vibe for me to like the League of Nations, where you just kind of put together a bunch of people and
Remember we
have
had the
at it.
AEW show and that kid tried to correct me on the oddities because I said Don Callis is coming out with the oddities.
What did he
He's
say?
He's like, aren't most of them dead? And I was like, well, then bring out the alive ones, stupid.
I mean, that's what they do for other factions and things, you know, like DX and stuff.
Oh, well, you want fucking Tony Khan to get out his Monster Reborn?
Phoenix down.
Yeah, that
Dude.
was silly. Here's another thing. Let me ask you guys this. Do you feel like there is a number that there's like, is there such a thing as too many people in a faction?
Yeah, the
Many
NWO.
cooks. Yeah.
So the NWO, I mean, I guess that's the obvious one.
You can have a lumberjack match with all lumberjacks being the NWO.
How many did they have at one point? I feel like I have this somewhere. They must have.
They could have had a Royal Rumble with just the NWO.
They had a whole pay-per-view, like with
That's
everyone
true.
over this.
That's very true.
DX had a pay-per-view and there was only 3 of them.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess. So, what about? Do you guys consider the Alliance as a faction? Because I feel like it technically is, right? I mean, and there were also a lot of people on there. Maybe not to the degree of the NWO.
It's pretty bad that there was more in the NWO than the Alliance.
Yeah, honestly. Because the Alliance was Paul Heyman, Shane, Stephanie, Steve Austin, Booker T, Chris Kanyon, Kidman, Storm, Hurricane Helms, Chuck Palumbo, Shauna, like all the D-listers. Ivory,
Rhino,
Ray, Devon, Sean Stasiak, Chavo Guerrero, Taz,
Jesus
Dreamer,
Christ.
Stacy Keibler, Tori Wilson, Hugh Morris, Diamond Dallas Page, Justin Credible, Raven, Mighty Molly, Christian, Steve Richards, Terry, Brian Adams, Brian Clark, William Regal, Kurt Angle, Deborah. Yeah, I feel like I don't know. Like, I feel like in that instance, it makes sense because it's like a company versus like a company's roster, you know, at least the illusion of it is. So I kind of get that because you're a show versus a show. And I guess like with the NWO, that was kind of like that too, but I mean, they just didn't book it like the right way, I think. And like you said, everyone was basically in the NWO, and that then just kind of loses its luster a little bit. Even like NWO 2002.
Yeah, that was a bad one. So, I do think the Alliance storyline, just to go back on it real quick, I know like despite the Alliance side not having like the big A-listers that WCW could have brought over, I know they weren't part of it. I still think they did a pretty decent job, like with the whole like build up and like the final fight they had at the pay-per-view and stuff.
Do you feel like a star was made though out of that Alliance?
Rob Van Dam.
Yeah, you got Rob Van Dam out of it. You got Booker T out of it.
Oh, those are good ones. Yeah.
As had a interesting run in WWE, but I think he still had a pretty solid career after that. He became a commentator and stuff.
That was a big part for Jericho.
Yeah.
Kane as a single star too, like as a face.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that whole thing.
Well, Jericho was on the WWE side, right? At that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised. I thought he was going to turn, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you guys in terms of like RVD and Booker T. But again, like they had like so many people in there.
Yeah.
That again, I mean, I guess like you said, too many cooks. Like you can only have a spotlight on so many people. You know, I feel like there is a good number. I don't know exactly what the limit is. I feel like the Nexus was a good amount of people, and I think that was like maybe 6 or 7-ish, something like that. I'm trying to think here. Yeah, there was. I don't know what the Bischoff administration was, because is that a faction? I think
Was
that might
that
have just been like a.
is that more of morally and all that? Tyson Tomko, maybe.
Um, yeah, there's like this might be like the peak SmackDown versus Raw like era. Like there was Bischoff SmackDown Mole Spy, which I guess was Stacy Keibler, Tess, Scott Steiner. Yeah, there's. I think this was like a Survivor Series type thing. What are there like I'm trying to think of like 3-man factions. I guess there are a bunch of original 3-man factions.
New Day.
New Day. And that's one of the factions that are like face that I think have been done really well, and it's honestly kind of a tragedy that Big E has had the injury that he's had, because I think he was like one of my favorite wrestlers at the time. And I mean, honestly, New Day as a faction was like one of the hottest things at that time, when there wasn't too many things going on the main roster that I thought were, as good as the New Day. They had a good. It was actually a rough start with the New Day, because they had this weird like package that made them kind of look like a Baptist group. Like Xavier Woods had like the suit on from like a mega church type pastor. They had in the video a bunch of like choir singers. And then they kind of shifted the style. I think they originally started as heels, I think. Yeah, they started as heels. And then they became a face faction. But I think their face version was much better than the heel New Day, in my opinion.
I actually don't remember that.
They got themselves over organically too, because remember before the New Day rocks was New Day sucks, and they would say rocks. Yeah. They would say rocks, and everybody would chant sucks, and they would still chant rocks.
Yeah, you're right. Are there? Yeah, what were you gonna say?
I'm sorry. No, I was just thinking, because we were thinking of like mid card, like not big stables, but there was like one stable that like was like probably the biggest names in the stable, but it wasn't like it wasn't very impactful to wrestling. At least I thought was the main event Mafia.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think for them, weren't they technically main event? Like we're talking like TNA, and in terms of like
for TNA, but I don't know. It didn't do anything for TNA. I felt it wasn't like as impactful like versus like other stables that were like coming up.
It was big for AJ Styles and Joe, because it was like a big thing where they kept trying to get Joe to join, and then Joe was like, "Y'all kicking your."
So maybe
like the bands or some shit.
So who was in there? Kurt Angle, Sting,
Booker T, Kevin Nash, Scott Steiner. And it came up with Steiner Math, man.
Is that where that happened?
Yeah.
I'm Big Boy Daddy. 8 days a week. There's only 7 days.
English.
Actually, never mind what I said. Steiner Math came from that. That's the greatest stable ever, hands down. Never mind.
Yeah.
I mean, that's memorable. Like the other the important factor is like you got to have moments, and I feel like that's something that people can point to.
Immortalized.
Good or bad. Let's see. Are there any like pure women factions that have been impactful on the rosters in WWE or WCW? Like if they were just straight up women's factions. I guess Damage Control is still around, and they had their impact, but I can't think of other ones that were like just
did a lot for Tony Storm.
True. I don't know if
I think it's
the Horsewomen, or was that just more of just like an unspoken thing with the horse?
That was like friends.
That was more like just like a loose
Locker room.
collection of them, like just kind of named, but they weren't like, oh, we're the Four Horsemen. It was more like you know, a nickname
Yeah.
instead of like an official faction.
Wasn't there a stable of women in WWF with like Jacqueline?
Lesbians.
That's like 04, 03, I think.
You're talking about PMS.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's even something that was like, yep, we're doing that. I guess it's not that crazy compared to like everything else in that time era.
In that era, yeah.
Pretty Mean Sisters.
Yeah.
Terry, Jacqueline, and Ryan Shamrock.
And
Meet Sean Stasiak.
Oh yeah. Oh my god, that's weird.
I guess yeah, that was pretty even. But were they impactful?
That Meat was their love slave.
I don't think that lasted that long, right? That was probably like a season.
Yeah.
Like a summer or something.
Let's see.
There was a stable in Lucha Underground that was of Kari Sane, Io Sky, and two other girls. They were pretty cool. Was it Black Lotus Society or something? I don't remember what their name was, but they had some really cool matches though. But like, not too many people really knew about that.
Yeah, I mean, at least I guess in terms of like a lens of like WWE.
Yeah.
And even I mean TNA, I guess had some. Wasn't there like a Mean Girls type faction in TNA with like Billy Gunn and Velvet Sky?
I know what you're talking about, but
I just forgot.
Wasn't
their
the
names.
winner in NXT as well? Like last year?
In NXT, I mean, there was the I think the Iconics.
Iconics are just two.
Well, what's the one with what's her name? She left WWE though. Mandy Rose. Wasn't she like the leader?
Yeah, you're talking about Toxic Attraction.
Yeah, that was a stable, wasn't it? So.
Yeah, but I guess like just the observation is like a lot of it revolved around like the male talent, and then they had like girls in there, but a lot of it was like manager, valet type person.
Toxic Attraction, there was just straight girls. There was no dudes.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure. I know Mandy Rose had the NXT. Yeah. Gigi Dolan and JC Jane also had the tag champs.
Yeah.
Like
mid 2000s, I guess there was like ECW Extreme Expose, but like that wasn't. I mean, they were wrestlers technically because it was Kelly, Brooke, and Layla. But I mean, I think they were mostly like strip than actually be like a competitive faction. But yeah, I guess there was the King's Court. Well, the King's Court is just Booker T, Queen Charmel, Regal, and Finlay. I forgot about them too. But yeah.
So is Damage Control like the only real like legitimately like?
I think it's WWE like main event, legit like WWE main roster.
Booker.
I think Damage Control is like one of the only like competent ones. Right to Censor, I guess, had Ivory, but that was.
I hated them.
Yeah,
everyone did.
You know how many times they stopped a 9-year-old me from seeing boobs?
Team Extreme. I will say, I guess, because that's technically also Lita. Team Extreme is a good example where Lita was a wrestler, a part of the team. You know, even when she was like with S.A. Rios or whatever, she would not just be like clapping or whatever and being on the side. Like she'd do Hurricane Rana's, moonsaults, and all that kind of stuff. Like she would actually wrestle and do things, and then obviously became her own person and wrestler after those factions. But again, like one of the only ones that were, in that position. Like even I think Trish Stratus in TNA, like not total non-sub action, but Test and Albert. like she was still kind of more of a manager, right? Before they actually put her in as a wrestler.
Yeah,
So,
she did a couple mixed tags.
yeah, not too many examples. Apparently, there was a right to nudity with Kat, Farouk, Bradshaw, and Jacqueline. I'm assuming
Oh,
it
that
was
was
like
like 2 episodes.
it was that supposed to be like a response to right to censor.
Yeah, they're trying to free the boobs. Gotta leave it up to the APA. They lost. I remember.
Man. Oh yeah. X Factor, X Pac, Just Incredible, Albert.
Yeah.
That was like
Albert's been in a lot of stables, man. Damn.
Yeah. Let's see.
The Hardy compound. I don't. Even, I mean, it was just his family though. Matt Hardy and his family.
Was that in TNA first?
Yeah. Well, Rebby Hardy wrestled in TNA. I wonder why she doesn't wrestle much.
Yeah. I mean that was those vignettes that they did. Wasn't there like a fake baby at one point or something? Like I remember vividly some kind of like plastic baby or something.
I'm sure.
Like that they had some wild vignettes. That I
The
might
groundskeeper.
Yeah, his father-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll like send out some clips of like favorite factions this week of just like clips of factions doing like a funny promo or something and just schedule them out this week. But yeah, I think at this point, yeah, what we I think all agree on in terms of like what makes a good faction is the right chemistry with the people in the group. You can't just kind of like throw them all together in a hodgepodge and then hope for the best. It's ideal for them to have like stars that are up and coming because I think it is a good vehicle to increase eyeballs on these people and help them make themselves superstars under the tutelage of someone like a Triple H or like I was gonna say Shield, but they were all basically kind of newish guys in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
But they did come up through like indies and stuff like that. So maybe a bad example.
What about the? Actually, I saw Bret Hart recently in an interview. He was talking about the Freebirds, and
Yeah. Got a
he's
whole
like, yeah,
world of them.
yeah, he didn't like them.
You don't
As
like
Bret
the
Hart doesn't like them.
Freebirds?
He didn't like the Freebirds. He doesn't like a lot of things, right? But like, he did not like the Freebirds. I mean, I don't really know too much. I mean, I didn't really watch them, obviously, growing up because they're a little bit before my time. But like, yeah, he just said, oh yeah, they never really did a big draw. They never even brought in a lot of money. They're just a bunch of drunks. I remember coming to the airport and they were all like passed out, like in the lobby of the airport, and they missed their flight.
Wow.
And stuff. And I guess like Bret Hart, like, and the other wrestlers were actually like taking similar flights around the same time. They all saw them, and I guess they got him fired after that. But he was saying, yeah, the Freebirds are just this overly rated group, and they got into the Hall of Fame even before my family did. Like, but the Hart Foundation is not even in there yet, or something like that.
No, they didn't invent the Freebird rule.
What's the
If they
Freebird?
invented the Freebird rule, maybe they would have been in sooner.
I think the Freebird rule is like when you have the tag belts, like anyone in that
It
group
belongs to
can
the faction.
be defending it.
It belongs to the
Mhm.
faction, like New Day. Like it wasn't always just like Kofi and Xavier. Like some matches were Biggie and Kofi, Biggie and Xavier.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, I think to that comment, I think Brett is. There's a lot of sour grapes. I feel like for him, I don't know. I feel like at that age, I can't be that bitter. Like I feel like in my current situation, like I feel like I'm pretty like laid back when it comes to certain things that I don't take too seriously or too personally. And that man is like in his 60s and he's still pretty, bitter.
I mean, he's also been through a lot of shit, though. So
He has.
They all have.
He has, but I will say, they all have, and I feel like there's just a certain point where you just gotta let it go. You gotta forgive, man. Like, I mean, he did it with Shawn Michaels, I guess, but still.
I still think he holds some kind of thing with that. Like, he's cool with them, but like, he's not like 100% over it, though.
Yeah, there's he still has a couple of axes to grind.
Yeah.
But yeah,
He just needs to punch Sean one good time like he did Vince.
No, you mean he needs to punch
or
Goldberg. right?
Goldberg. I think he'd
No, he
rather
needs to
kick
kick
Goldberg in the
Goldberg.
head.
Talking
But
that
He
shit.
said,
Hey, maybe we'll see it at Crown Jewel because they'll definitely pay for a match like that. Bret Hart versus Goldberg. There's already some kind of seeds of like Goldberg being in some kind of match. If it's like a Gunther, Goldberg, or what, or Gage. I don't know if he's like into wrestling, but it'll be WWE's version of a Hook.
Gage.
uh,
Put a big stupid light.
Gage.
It's not even cool like hooks.
Yeah. But I think this is a good place to wrap for this episode of the Chi-Town Shoot podcast. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, rate us, and leave your feedback. Tune in next time for more wrestling madness. Until then, keep marking out.